Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about your data and how AI is putting it at risk. We'll also spend a little time discussing how to balance the innovation with AI, along with proper security measures, so that you don't find yourself kind of in a similar situations that other organizations have found. Um, I'll introduce myself here. Dave Roberson is one of the founding partners at CMIT Solutions. Our goal is to help businesses stay ahead of the curve with top-tier IT solutions that enhance both productivity and security. Our company focuses on providing exceptional cybersecurity, managed services, and cloud support to ensure their business succeed. In my role, I'm deeply committed to understanding each client's challenges and delivering solutions that drive efficiency and growth. And then we also, on the panelists here, have Tony Romero, who's our marketing coordinator, and he'll be managing the chat and Q&A pieces of the webinar, as well as there'll be a few areas where we'll be sharing some content with you guys. I'll put that in there where you can kind of read that or go and download it as you see fit. All right, so let's dive in. All right. And before, I just want to frame this as a quick perspective on AI. One of the purposes of this presentation for you today is for me to give you just some really easy things that you can go back and execute. I'll show you some things that can help your organization improve some speed, accuracy, and efficiency. And I am going to show you how to use AI to your advantage and experience firsthand the amount of impact this has when you do it right. So, how can you take advantage of AI in your workplace today? I'm going to show just a real super simple prompt within ChatGPT and see how, so you can kind of see some things that it can efficiently do for you guys. So in here, you'll see I have just a simple cash flow analysis to the left, and then I'm going to prompt ChatGPT over to the right. I'm going to copy and paste in the results of the spreadsheet and let ChatGPT do the analyzing. And you can see quickly kind of gives us some charts, some results. And it's always good, to make sure that you're validating the results and ensuring that the accuracy is there. And also as you're kind of communicating back and forth with whatever AI model you are using, the more that you articulate what you're looking for, the better you're going to train it and get more accurate results. But I just kind of wanted to do a real quick, simple example so that you could see how quickly plug and play AI models can be. Now, let's imagine that this was your own company's data and someone on your staff uploaded that to a public chat GPT to get the results. So what information did you just share with ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot if you're using that? Transactions with vendor information in them. It could be current payroll information that's embedded in there, and things like the amount that you're paying your employees. So all of that is very sensitive data. And you should be asking yourself, should I have put that in ChatGPT, or is it better to maybe run through Microsoft Copilot? And this is a good question that I get from a lot of clients today and folks that I'm talking out in the field. Some other things to think about here is, did you break your company's policies? Or do you have any policies currently in place around AI usage? And the truth is, you probably willfully leaked some sensitive data already and probably don't even know it. So I know you're probably thinking to yourself, well, who is Dave and why does he care about this? Why should I listen to him? And I have gone through and done several incident response plans in the past for organizations and have dealt firsthand with seeing the aftermath of when a hacker gets in and locks your data up or gets access to sensitive data, and have seen the devastation that this can cause, both to a community, a business, or even person's lives. And the truth is, most of these data breaches happen because of insider threats. Very simple. What is that? Someone clicks on a link, someone will share a password, or somebody may miswire information and send it to the wrong spot. So just to recap, someone would click on a link, someone would share passwords, or somebody wires money to the wrong person or organization. The problem is that even when cyber awareness training is going on in your organization, and even with clear rules in place and clear understanding of what needs to go on, things do still have a tendency to fall through the cracks. And there's a new employee on everybody's team, which is called AI. And the thing with AI is a lot of times it skips the training and doesn't necessarily care about the rules and policies and procedures that you have in place. And your team most likely is already using AI. And Tony's going to put this article in from Microsoft in the chat if you want to read a little bit more. That just talks about right now they're seeing 75% of employees are already using some form of AI in the workplace right now. But are they telling you how they are using it or what AI applications they're using, AI plugins? Those are pretty common now. Uh, In a recent study, over half of the employees who use AI in the workplace say that they are reluctant to divulge the fact that they're applying it to their most important tasks. And roughly the same number worry about using it on critical tasks in their job because it makes them look replaceable. So does your team understand the risk when they're using AI? They don't understand that what AI sees, AI is also storing. So let's think about this for a minute. AI is set up to pull information from all different places in your organization. Very commonly it'll pull information from emails, Excel files, Word documents, PowerPoints, SharePoint folders, OneDrive folders, and even your CRM software. And I think, you'll all starting to see just more and more AI. I've used it a little bit with the Adobe as well. Most of AI models that are being used right now are also free models. And these models don't have specific rules about what can or cannot be used to train their models itself. So why does this all matter to you? And we'll take a little bit closer look at that now. Data leakage is the primary thing that you should be concerned about. You see, and there's different ways that data can be leaked out through your organization. You can leak it out through the front door, it could be leaking out the back door, or through the side door. And very simply put, the front door is your employees are feeding sensitive data into different AI tools. This can be personal data, financial information, intellectual property, and credentials and communication. But they only see the reward and they're not necessarily seeing the risk. And the problem is they only see the improvement to their own productivity. They're able to have higher accuracy, they're able to move faster and be more efficient. But according to a recent study, 1 in every 3 employees admits to inputting sensitive data into AI models. And Tony, if you could please maybe put that article out there in the chat for me. And when it comes to these different solutions, the ignorance or lack of training and policy is the risk that you're taking on. And then as a recent example, I'm going to talk about this one with Samsung. Some employees were caught leaking proprietary information and sensitive intellectual property into their ChatGPT. And they didn't even stop to consider the fact that this would have larger ramifications. So what happened? There was an engineer at Samsung that made a critical mistake. He was uploading some proprietary information that was part of their source code into their ChatGPT, and it wasn't a hacker. It wasn't malware. It was their own people that were feeding this. So think about that. The risk didn't necessarily come from someone outside the organization. It came from somebody inside the business with a simple copy and paste. And the severity of the league, while not completely clear, has some real concerns that you need to think about. The moment that data was placed out in ChatGPT, it hit OpenAI's servers, and Samsung lost control of that data. That information now may be sitting on infrastructure they don't own, can't see, or cannot wipe clean. And there's really no way to guarantee that it won't show up in some other user's query when they're interacting with ChatGPT. By default, ChatGPT will retain conversations and use them to train future models. So what does this mean? If someone deletes a chat, that data may have already been baked into the AI itself. Disabling history now, while I recommend that everybody does that with their AI models that they're using for sensitive business purposes, and it's a great idea, but that doesn't roll back time. And Samsung, in this particular case, learned that the hard way. Well, they did, however, respond pretty fast. They banned the use of generative AI tools internally. So they did it a full stop. And they didn't do it necessarily because AI was bad or not helpful, but they just did it because it was used in an unacceptable manner and posed too much risk. And this became more of a governance issue and not necessarily a tech issue. So we are talking about trade secrets, intellectual property, and financial information that's being dropped into chat conversations that goes somewhere, but no one knows exactly where that information is going a lot of times. So here's a question that I want every business leader to think about. What's your AI usage policy today? Do your team members know that they can or cannot share what they can and cannot share? If someone dumps sensitive data into a chatbot tomorrow, will you even know about it, right? In the particular case, Samsung had to learn the hard way. And I think there are some things that you can proactively do to help prevent this happening within your organization. So first think about, do you know your own policies for proper use of AI? And are you protecting your front door? So think about things about right communication, how frequent that communication needs to be, training of current employees, and onboarding of new employees. So, Tony, I think, did we have someone raise their hand?
Yeah, we had Joe raise his hand. So Joe, if you let me go ahead and unmute you here.
Oh, did he drop
Oops.
off?
I think he did, yeah.
Okay, we'll keep moving. And if anybody has a question, please feel free to type it in the chat, and I'll let Tony know that we can kind of try to address that. So the next one I'm going to talk about is the back door, because that one's a little bit different. The back door is all about AI harvesting data automatically. And how does that exactly work? Well, AI models like both Copilot will plug directly into different products that you use on a daily basis. So let's imagine somebody on your team has personal identification and identifiable information on their device. One of the things that we will often see when we analyze environments are things like payroll information, W-2s, maybe 401k census data that's being housed in there in the downloads folder. And Copilot will see and oftentimes store that information in their models. So it's walking through all the data that's on your device, including your OneDrives, and it'll see your team conversations and every little detail in your email inbox. And AI isn't asking for permission. So, one thing here to think about, according to Microsoft, Copilot assesses the context through Microsoft's Graph API. And so what this means is Copilot sees information and generates response anchored in your organizational's data, such as your user documents, emails, calendars, chats, meetings, and contacts. So if you have any misconfigured security settings or permissions within the tenant, the Microsoft tenant, that's not set up exactly how you'd like, there's potential risk of you feeding sensitive data into that AI model that some other person on your staff may be able to interact with. So maybe you don't have data loss prevention set up with your organization, and you have data that's sitting out there not categorized as sensitive. AI is scooping all of that data. This makes improper data storage a huge risk to your organization. And a question for you to think about as as the back door of your company is, do you currently categorize sensitive data within your company's Microsoft 365 tenant? For instance, things like financial information, payroll information, and then are these documents specifically tagged as sensitive? Because if not, Copilot can see them and use that information as context when responding to somebody's prompt inside your organization, or even give that information out when prompting in the right way. So the back door can be just as dangerous as the front door if improperly configured. Next, let's talk about the side door. And the side door is where all the various different AI plugins and integration starts to come in play. The thing is, hackers are taking advantage of you and your team's desire to become more efficient. The first thing they're doing is pretty simple. They're embedding various different malware into AI applications and plugins. And what this means is that they may create an actual usable AI application or even plugin. These are coming out left and right, things like brand new software tools, assistants within the AI application themselves. And the problem is many of them aren't fully vetted or tested. And so if your employees are downloading and running things in your company's environment that may contain malicious code. And a recent example of this had to do with Disney. An employee downloaded a free open source AI graphics generator tool on his computer, and it wasn't real. So when that went through and started to harvest all of his passwords, the account credentials to Disney, and it wasn't his personal Disney account they were breaking into. So there was things that actually allowed the hacker to get into employee accounts and started exposing company data and potential trade secrets. So if Disney can't do this right, a lot of us small businesses have similar risks. The other things that are happening is people are asking AI for advice. I'm sure you've already done that. I do it myself. And you might ask AI for advice this morning and say, what are you eating for lunch and calorie intakes or something like similar to that. But there's more. Hackers are asking AI to come up with ways to break to break into the solutions that we're using today to provide security. And we're also spending so much time putting those in place. So just think about that, how the hackers are using AI to try to make it more efficient to break in or circumvent the security measures that we're used to putting into place today. And there's often the programmers that are building these AI tools, they're building them very quickly. And I think that's a challenge we have in the marketplace today. And why? Well, simple, because it's a time that we're in here with AI where I think the market sees a lot of value to increasing people's productivity. And everyone's just trying to rush products out the door as fast as they can. And this oftentimes will lead to missteps, potential vulnerabilities that can be left wide open. And a lot of times those are found when it's often too late. AI researchers themselves are also being targeted right now. So a lot of hackers out there, specifically we've seen coming from China, who have they're deploying remote access toolkits and a number of AI researchers and they're ended up leaking the whole trove of information that these AI researchers and developers are using and trying to use that to expose weaknesses for various different AI platforms. But why does AI want all of this data? And it's very simple. Every time we use AI, we're continuing to train the models. We're training it to solve problems. We're also training it how to better communicate with real live humans. And you're performing quality analysis. And what does this mean? Well, when you're working with an AI program and it doesn't give you back exactly what you asked for, and if you're going back and forth with it, you're just improving it and teaching it how to become better and more accurate. And you're building and improving AI right now with every chat you have and every piece of data that you're sharing with it. And so it's your team. Problem is they could be sharing and training AI with your company's sensitive data. They may be sharing and training information like trade secrets, PII, vendor information, and or vendor contracts. So there's one last thing that I want to mention on the AI side when it comes to users. AI is also making us dumber. There's been a number of studies out there that comes down to autocracy. It's a situation where if you're not thinking, if you're not coming up with the stuff on your own, you're becoming weaker at coming up with new things. So simple, right? Think about this. It's a use it or lose it scenario. So if you think about your physical health and your muscles, if you're not working them out all the time, you're not getting stronger. And similar things go for how your brain operates. So hopefully I didn't scare you too bad there. But when I think about that, it always kind of troubles me, what's in store for the future. Um, so what problems here do we have on, right? The problem is really kind of how AI is currently working and a lot of misconceptions or just human ignorance of blindly feeding the models and blindly trusting what the AI output is. So here, a generative AI system, this is a quote here from MIT News. A generative AI system is one that learns to generate more objects that looks like the data it was trained on. So if you think about that for a minute, a trained expert making decisions on years and years worth of experience in any field. This is where we are at today. The internal workings are so intricate that even experts, have a hard time explaining how they work and what the specific output will be. The complexity of these models often leads to kind of a black box problem, where it's difficult really to understand why a model makes a particular decision. And people will blindly trust what the computer or chatbot tells them. So let's just think about this for a minute. AI doesn't necessarily guarantee us accuracy. Just like people, it will make mistakes or can make mistakes. And that creates, quite a large problem. Because it does it with such confidence. There's a lot of times I've seen, answers or output that it's given back, and it looks so clean and articulate that you just want to, quickly believe it and try to, move on to the next task. But that's not always the case, right? So the false confidence is really what creates a lot of risk within users, especially people, who treat AI like a trusted advisor. So, I explained AI is a black box, right? Especially with deep learning models, layers upon layers of decisions, making we don't fully understand what is exactly going on with them. We see what comes out, but the logic in between is often invisible. That makes auditing AI behaviors incredibly difficult, if not impossible to do in real time. So here's the human factor. We're hardwired to trust computers. People see results from ChatGPT and they just assume it's factual, like getting test results from your doctor. But the problem with AI, doesn't appear like that. It's a predictive engine, not a true, truth machine, right? So the blind trust is a liability, if we're not dealing with that carefully and educating our users on that. So the takeaway here is really you need to have processes and policies in place. Your team must validate what AI outputs, especially in customer-facing roles or compliance-heavy roles. Don't let automation replace your accountability of your team. So I'm talking about making sure that we review, verify, and document the outputs of AI at times. Because when AI does get it wrong, the liability essentially will fall on you. So, and now AI is learning and growing on its own, and we're feeding it every day. There's, that the users are more and more feeding into these models, and they're just getting better at interacting with us. So, what can you do? Well, there's a number of AI implementation best practices that we'll share with you today. You need to think about what you allow in terms of usage to make sure that everything is in the right place and being used in the right, safe manner. Then on the flip side, you'll need to think about what you won't allow, what your own best practices are when it comes to using AI. And the key here is to establish this immediately. You see, some of your clients may not want their data to be used in an AI training model. And some of your contracts, especially the newer ones, may have clauses in them that say specifically no artificial intelligence. So I think we're in an era where it's very important to read contracts with current, new contracts with vendors, and maybe even have that with your clients. So I'm talking about contracts and commitments to your vendors. And we're also talking about customer expectations of how you treat their data. So these are all hidden promises that you're making right now, and ultimately, you're going to be responsible. So what's the first step you can really do to start to mitigate this risk? And that is, implement an acceptable use policy around AI. And I'm going to give you a hand with this in today's webinar and give you some kind of actionable information that you can go back and put one of these policies in place. So, the next slide here, we're going to share a AI worksheet, and you can download that same worksheet at the URL that Tony's going to put into the chat right now. And I'll give you a little bit of time here if you want to go ahead and open that up and take a look at it. Should be a PDF that you can then download onto your own machine. And it's going to look a little like this here. So it's going to explain the purpose. It's going to give you some clear instructions of how to work through it. And then it's going to give you some reminders there. And this document's really designed to be kind of a plug and play first step that you can start doing and utilizing with the communication of your current team and new employees. That way you can set, kind of the right expectation of how you want your organization to interact with AI. So, and you should be able to customize this policy to your organization's specific preferences. So some key points to consider when you're walking through this activity are generative AI apps and services going to be allowed or prohibitive, right? I know some companies that have just taken a hard no and are going to wait to see how this, plays out in their marketplace. Then if allowed, which ones are you officially going to endorse? Who is in the organization that is responsible for approving the use? So I think it's important to have somebody that's, designated as your compliance champion for approving these. And then who in your organization is responsible for implementation of them? And then what is considered acceptable use? So sorry, let's go back here. These are all just good questions here that you guys should be asking as you work through this document. So what we just did with some of those questions and working through that document should be able to give you a fully built policy, a good first step, as a piece of, an actual tangible thing that you could take back to your team and start to communicate that. And that piece doesn't take too much time, right? As long as you have the right people involved and the right knowledge. Um, what's next? AI is a very powerful tool, and we all know that, right? But you don't want to just give it a blank check and let it start making decisions for you. Why? Well, AI security is not a given and it's not automatic. If you're using it improperly, it can expose your company's sensitive data. It can increase the attack surface of your organization for hackers, and it could lead to regulatory fines and liabilities that you may not even be thinking about today. So the key here is to not allow AI to take advantage of your organization. And we just went through some very simple steps in a document on how to create a policy. And now when you get that all put together, you got to ask, well, is that all? And what's next, right? So I think, the honest part here is after you get this done, um, it really doesn't do any good, right? If nobody is actually reading the policy. And even if they do read it, does it really mean they understand it, much less even follow it, right? I think we probably have all seen in situations where policies, just don't connect with the users, and they tend to go unnoticed, right? So that's kind of the intent. Without execution just will create exposure for you if not done properly. So think back, have you ever rolled out a new policy and have it fail completely flat, right? No behavior change, no adoption, maybe even someone passive resistance, right? Um, why does this happen? Well, usually because no one owns the actual rollout, and no one made sure that, the folks in the organization understood it, and no one is also being held accountable to make sure that it sticks. With AI policies, understanding it isn't really, just a nice to have. It's essential because a single mistake, like dumping sensitive data into ChatGPT, will or could expose your company to a lawsuit, maybe a compliance failure, or cause reputational damage. So employees must know what's allowed, what's not, and really understand why does that matter to your organization. So here's how you can make it real. Get everyone to sign it first, right? Acknowledge that they have read and understood the AI policy and make sure that they're committed to following it. And, I know sometimes this just sounds like busy work, but it's not. Doing all this properly with the right documentation creates evidence in the situation if something goes wrong. It'll demonstrate, that your leadership has acted and is trying to act in the company's best interest. And that will be your defense if you ever get yourself caught in a sticky situation like an audit, potential lawsuit, or maybe a uncomfortable conversation in a boardroom. But what about the data you don't control? How can you manage that? And I know some of you are thinking, this isn't my job, or this isn't what I signed up for. I get it. A lot of times these new technologies can be daunting. You think they might be creating more work than what the value they're providing. Um, you may not be configuring firewalls or patch systems, but I want you to know that, it's still your data, right? And you're making decisions that impact your systems, and you use tools like AI. That means you're part of the risk change. So cybersecurity isn't just an IT issue. And I really think that's a point that I think, I really want to make in this slide. It's a business's responsibility And that really starts at the leadership team. So just saying that IT handles it is kind of like saying that legal would handle the ethics. It's kind of really missing the point. You can outsource, accountability, but when your team makes decisions involving your data or AI, your name is on it, right? So whether you touch a keyboard or not, leadership is required to engage and not just delegate that and really ensure that this sticks within the culture of your organization. When will you have time, right? Are you to do it after it's too late and you have a breach? Or are you to do it after, you have a first incident or lawsuit on your hands? Or after maybe your clients and lawyers come knocking? So here's the truth. You'll have to make time one way or another, and it could either be done proactively on your terms or reactively on theirs. And I'll say from experience, the latter tends to be far more expensive and stressful. So let's put a plan in place to avoid liability, breaches, and potential noncompliance. That's something here at CMIT Solutions St. Louis that we can help with. We can go through and provide an analysis of your data. We can help you figure out how you're doing when it comes to things like cyber hygiene. So, whether you have employees who are leaving personal identifiable information, leaking personal identifiable information like 401k censuses documents, payroll information that they might have stored on their PCs or in their download folders. So if this interests you, we can offer a free cyber risk assessment. This is kind of a level one penetration and vulnerability testing, and with some of the new enhancements to this functionality, we can also identify what AI plugins or AI software is stored within your organization. So, and Tony will put this link in here on how you can contact us and learn more about it. So, what will we do if we engage with one of these assessments? We'll analyze your security for you. We're going to meet with you to go over the results, and we'll give you some simple steps that you could take to protect yourself and your data. So I encourage you really to be proactive to ultimately reduce your liability. So you're probably thinking, okay, well, what's the catch? Well, there really is no catch here. We've seen the type of devastation that happens when a hacker gets in and ends up leaking data to places like the dark web. And I just want to prevent that from happening to you, especially when it comes to your artificial intelligence implementation. So if that's something you want to, just go to the URL that Tony put in the chat there, and let's work on getting that done sooner than later. And a solid implementation of AI really depends on a secure foundation. And I don't want to discourage you from using AI. I think there's a lot of benefits that it can give to your workforce. Just has to be done properly and thoughtfully. Um, so that does conclude the end of the slides and the presentations that I wanted to share with you today. I also encourage you to stay abreast because we are going to have some more webinars coming up in the new year around AI and maybe more specific tools on how you can use AI within a container of your company, ensure that it's not leaking out. So stay tuned for that. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to open that up and answer them at this time.
This isn't so much a question, but a comment that Mark dropped in the Q&A. He mentioned that some state laws for some industries have some AI policies that exist as well. So, that was something that I thought was interesting. Thank you, Mark, for sharing that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And one of the challenges is that I have seen really is both the technology and the people that are writing the policies and trying to control it. It's all very fluid. and moving fast, right? So, and we all still have our day-to-day commitments, and it's not like we've all just shifted to become AI experts. So it's still kind of a scenario that, we're waiting to see how it evolves. And that's kind of approach that we are here at CMIT Solutions St. Louis are trying to take, right? We're trying to be very thoughtful of how we roll it out, not necessarily internally, but also externally to our clients, right? We really want to make sure that we do our due diligence and make sure that we have the right training and staff in place to support, AI and how it's rolled out. So thank you for that, Mark. Tony, did you see anything else come in?
Um, no, no more questions have come in.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for attending. We are going to get this recording packaged up, put on our website, and we'll push it out. And if you feel like there's somebody that you know within your sphere of influence that may benefit from this, please share it because they'll be able to have access to those links and go out and start to implement their own AI use policy and start to learn, maybe the importance of how you really need to take ownership of integrating that into the culture of your organization. So, all right. Well, that'll conclude our presentation. I thank everybody for joining and have a great holiday season. And I wish you the best as we move into 2026 in the new year.